Salvete omnes, this is Gai Iuli Caesaris Commentarii de Bello Gallico Liber Primus, Chapter 8. So as we begin, it is important to keep in mind that the chapters, 7, 8, 9, etc., and the slides of these PowerPoints that display them, these were not divided up in this way by Caesar. The way that Caesar wrote or had somebody else write for him while he dictated to this scribe, and then these things were published in wall of text format. So they weren't divvied up like this. So keep in mind that whatever may have been the subject from a previous selection, like say chapter 7, it could carry on over to chapter 8 like it does here. We've not had a change of subject since the last chapter. So Caesar writes, Inter ea legione quam secum habebat militibusque, qui ex provincia convenerant, a lacu lemano, qui in flumen Rhodanum influit, ad montem ioram, qui fine sequanorum ab Helvetiis dividit, milia passum unde viginti murum in altitudinem pedum sedecem fossamque perducit. And we'll stop there for now. So inter ea, that is meanwhile, back at the ranch. So meanwhile, ea legione is worth mentioning here because I have students complain constantly about the word order of Latin, especially in this selection. It is worth keeping in mind, especially when it comes to Caesar's Latin, that the man often puts things in the order chronologically, the order in which they happened, or an order that makes sense to him. So he likes to arrange his sentences, especially the long ones, in sort of a syllogistic format. So he'll put time, setting, proposition A, B, C, all the way to the end. He likes to give the time and the setting and then the causes and the reasons for why he does something. His action usually forms the main sentence. So we have meanwhile ea legione. So ea, that is the ablative singular feminine of is, ea, id, he, she, it, or this, that, when it's an adjective like it is here, agreeing with the noun legione. So legio, legion is feminine, meaning legion. Remember, legion is feminine. So ea legione, this is ablative, singular, feminine. Reason for ablative? Well, there are like around 15, that's all. I would guess means here. It's not going to be time. Nothing to do with time because legion can't show time. It's not going to be any sort of location or separation or anything like that. We lack a preposition. We don't have a preposition like ab or de or ax before ea legione. So I'm going to go ahead and guess means because the ablative of means does not use a preposition. It is prepositionless to show the means or instrument, why something happens, or with what instrument something happens. Quam, that is a relative pronoun, kicking us into a relative clause. So the relative pronoun must agree with its antecedent, that would be legione, in gender and number, not necessarily in case. The case will come from how the relative pronoun acts inside of its clause. And its clause is going to be quam secum habebat. Quam, so that's going to be accusative, as opposed to legione's ablative. So accusative, the main reason for function job for accusative is the direct object. So I'm going to guess that quam, the legion which, and which is going to be our direct object. Secum, that is the ablative se, with the preposition cum being a postposition affixed to it like an enclitic. You see that in mecum, tecum, nobiscum, vobiscum, and secum. So those are ablatives of accompaniment. With me, with you, with us, with ye, and with say is the reflexive. You should be able to circle the reflexive and draw an arrow back to the subject. Whoop. Habebat, the T in habebat, he, she, or it. So with himself, herself, itself, whatever the subject of habebat is. And the subject of habebat is, you guessed it, Caesar. The legion by means of that legion which, he, Caesar, habebat, had secum with himself. So ablative of accompaniment, he had a legion with him, alongside him, in his company. Remember that there was only one legion in ulteriore Gallia. And then we have militibusque. So this is the end of the relative clause. So the relative clause is quam se quam habebat. It's giving us more information. It links up with the ea here. Which legion? The one that he had with him. Militibusque, and we have the enclitic que, and. Remember, it is translated before the word to which it is attached. We have that legion, and also, don't forget, in addition to, militibus, and the soldiers, by means of the soldiers, another ablative of means, it's plural, by means of the soldiers, which ones? The qui, the ones who. Another relative clause introduced by this relative pronoun, nominative plural masculine. It must have the same gender and number as its antecedent militibus, but not necessarily case. So militibus is ablative and plural and masculine. Qui is plural and masculine. It does not have to be ablative. Here it is nominative, because inside this clause, qui ex provincia convenerant, it is acting as the subject. And by means of the soldiers, who ex provincia, ex plus the ablative, separation out of the province, that refers to the Provincia Romana, the Roman province, over which Caesar is governor. Convenerant. This is the third plural pluperfect active indicative of convenio, convenire, conveni, conventus. So they had convened. They had venio, come, cum, together. They had convened, gathered together. And by means of the soldiers who had convened, gathered out of the province. All right, so it's by means of that legion. So using that legion, which one? The one that he, Caesar, had with him. And using the soldiers, which ones? The ones who had convened from the province. We have plus from or by. Here it's going to be from, and it's going to be ablative of separation, followed by the ablative lacu, ablative of lacus, us, masculine, means lake. Lemano, this is modern-day Lake Geneva, so back then, lacus lemanus, ablative of separation. So from Lake Geneva, you can call it lacus lemanus if you want. So we start here from Lake Geneva, that's our starting point. What is that? Where is that? Qui, excellent, an explanatory relative clause. So nominative, singular, masculine. I know it has to be singular because the antecedent is singular. Lacu lemano. It's singular and it's masculine, whereas this is ablative of separation. This qui is nominative subject, which we don't say lakes who. We don't say lake who. We say lake which. The lake which in plus the accusative will show motion towards. In plus the ablative will show location. Flumen, that's accusative. So we're going into the river. Into the river Rhodanum, that is the Rhone River, the modern-day Rhone River. Back then, the Rhodanus. Influit. Notice we have the in as a prefix to the verb, and then the in right here, just in case you get confused. So it flows into Lacu Lemano from Lake Geneva, which flows into the Rhone River. Odd. AD, odd, plus the accusative showing motion towards. So we are going from Lake Geneva all the way up to ad montem Ioram, up to the Jura mountain range. Accusative motion towards. Qui, and then another explanatory relative clause explaining about this montem Ioram. Qui, so it has to be singular. It has to be masculine. Here it is nominative. Which, fines, accusative or nominative. It's not going to be nominative because that's the nominative. So it's going to be accusative, direct object. Fines, finium, masculine, plural, means boundaries, borders, territory. Sequenorum, the territory of the Sequani. Helvetis, plus the ablative separation from the Helvetians. Dividit, and here is our verb that goes with qui. So this is our relative clause here. So the Jura mountain range, which divides the territory of the Sequani from the Helvetians, ablative of separation. All right, so we're starting here from Lake Geneva, which flows into the Rhone River. So from Lake Geneva, which flows into the Rhone River, all the way up to where? Ad montem Ioram, to the Jura mountain range, which divides the territory of the Sequani from the Helvetians. So all the way here. So following the Rhone River. Milia, that is milia, milium, neuter plural. So it means thousands. Mille, singular, thousand. That's the indeclinable adjective. It just simply agrees with a noun. So you can say 1,000 soldiers is mille milites. Now, if you wanted to say more than 1,000, 2,000 soldiers, you have to say 2,000s of soldiers, 2,000. So you have duo milia. So milia is a noun. That means that it's 2,000s of soldiers. You can't say 2,000 soldiers have a noun agree with a noun. You got to turn one into kind of an adjective thing, like the genitive, the partitive genitive. So 2,000s of soldiers, and that explains possum. That's possum. That's the partitive genitive. So thousands of paces. In English, we just say miles. How many miles? Un de wiganti. So that's 10, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 19. Un de wiganti, 1 from 20, 19. So 19 thousands of paces, that equals 19 miles. The Roman mile, not too far off from our standard American mile, so it's negligible distance. It would add up over time though. Murum, so we have a wall. This is the thing that we're doing. We're doing something. We have a wall that starts from Lake Geneva. It goes to the Jura mountain range, and it is this length. So milia is an accusative. It's an extent of space. Accusative of extent of space. The accusative always shows what receives the action of the verb. And it will always show how long, or it can show how long that action occurs, so accusative of duration of time, or how far the action occurs, so accusative of extent of space. Remember that space and time are the same thing, the time-space continuum. Remember that space and time are the same thing, especially in language. We use the same prepositions to talk about moving through space as we do through moving through time. So milia, accusative of extent of space. It's how far it goes. How far? 19 miles. 19 thousands, possum, of paces. That's a partitive genitive. A murum, this is the accusative direct object. In plus the accusative, into the height, in altitude. You can see altus right there. How tall is the murum? It is in height. Pedum, this is pes pedis masculine, meaning foot, so genitive plural. Of in height of feet sedecim, that's sex decim, so 6 and 10, 16. That is 16 of feet. It is in height of 16 feet, genitive of measure, so that's a precise measurement. Someone went out and measured that thing. Que attached to the fossum, and a fossum. A fossa, I feminine, is a ditch. Romans famously, they went in, they dug a ditch. The dirt from the ditch, they pile up on one side, and that becomes the beginning of a rampart when you put a palisade fence on it or some other form of wall. So they dug this fossum, and then the main verb is perducit. Whew, love this sentence. What a workout. So perducit means something like he, meaning Caesar, leads to completion. You can just say he builds. There's the perduco, leads duco, per, through, thoroughly, to completion. So in English, we might say something like, Caesar builds, in the meantime, Caesar builds or constructs a wall, 19 miles in length, 16 feet in height, and a ditch, using that legion which he had with him, and with the soldiers who had gathered from the province, starting at Lake Geneva, which flows into the Rhone River, up to the Jura mountain range, which divides the territory of the Sequani from the Helvetians. You can translate it that way, but note that English has to shift around the words and pervert the meaning, or not the meaning, but pervert the order of the Latin as it comes to you. we want to start here, where the main subject, he, Caesar, is contained. And this is the main verb, perducet. But if you look at the Latin, the way that Caesar has written down the words, or had somebody else write down the words for him as he spoke them, you'll see sort of the chronological order of the events as they are laid out. So in the meantime, because the last time we left him in chapter 7, he was telling the Helvetians, oh yes, I will give some thought and consideration. I'll need a day or so to deliberate about whether I will allow you to pass through my territory. So please come back on some date. And yes, indeed. But in the meantime, in the meantime, using that legion, which he had with him, and with the soldiers who had convened from the province, because this is his starting point, this is his instrumentality. These are the means, the legione and the militibus, these soldiers. This is how he's going to accomplish what he's going to accomplish. So he starts with them, because they're like his building materials. He starts here from Lake Geneva. What is that? Well, it flows into the Rhone River. Oh, okay. And then he goes this thing is going to go all the way up to the Jura mountain range. Well, what's that? It divides the territory of the Sequani from the Helvetians. Oh, okay. Let's see. It's going to be 19 miles long and a wall. Yeah, a wall. 19 miles long. Let's make it 16 feet in height. And you know what? Just throw on a ditch. Why not? And perducet. He builds it. Leads to completion. So the Latin unfolds the way that the actions actually chronologically occurred, whereas English has to shift things around to make the subject the first word, and then the verb follows the subject, and then the direct object follows the verb, etc. All right. Eo opere perfecto praesidia disponit, castella communet, quo facilius si se invito transire conentur prohibere possit. Or prohibere possit. So eo opere perfecto. Eo from is ea id, it agrees with opere. So with that opere, so opus operis neuter, meaning work. So we get the word opera, which was a work. He means like the work, the fortifications, the project, what they've been working on. An opus, it's like a project. A magnum opus is your great project. It's typically an author or somebody's greatest work. A magnum opus, that's your big work. Perfecto, from perficio, perficere, perfeci, perfectus. This is going to be an ablative. It's going to be singular, and it's going to be neuter to agree with opere. Why would we have a string of ablatives here? An ablative noun with an adjective modifying it, and then an ablative participle kind of hanging out absolutely by itself. My man, it's an ablative absolute. So your training wheels translation is with the noun and then the participle. With the noun participled, with the noun having been verbed. So with that work, with that fortification, he means the murum, the wall, perfecto. It is led to completion. It is perficio. It is done thoroughly, completed. With that work completed, you can expand that translation out to after the work had been completed, when the work had been completed, having completed the work. Remember, Latin doesn't have a perfect active participle, so having completed the work, we can't say that. We have to shift that around to with the work having been completed, because Latin only has a perfect passive participle. Praesidia disponit, praesidia from praesidium, praesidi neuter. This is either the nominative or accusative plural neuter. I cheated, I glanced ahead. Disponit, third person singular, so that's he. This has got to be the accusative direct object of this verb, because if it were the nominative, it would be the subject, and this is singular, and that's plural, and that's why that's no work. So praesidia disponit. This pono sets down, dis. And that means at intervals, at regular intervals or placements. So he sets at regular intervals praesidia, garrisons. I would hate to have to leave a garrison here. So it's a contingent of troops. So he sets garrisons, contingents of troops, at regular intervals. Castella communet. We do not have an and. We don't have a conjunction here. So you could say this is a syntotonic. You can add an and here. and he castella. Look at the diminutive. Oh, the little. It's a little. We get castle from this. It's like little camp, little fort. Just say fort. And forts from castellum in neuter he communet. You can see munia, munire, munivi, munitus. He munia munitions. He fortifies. Communio. He really does it. So he fortifies. He sets down entrenched for a long campaign. He fortifies castella, camps, forts. Quo facilius. Now, quo could be a number of things, so I'm not really going to try and make a decision right here. It could be a relative pronoun. It could actually be quo introducing us to a comparative purpose clause. Who knows these things? Let's continue. Facilius. All right, facilius. That's a comparative. Quo plus a comparative. Might it be a comparative purpose clause? It could. In which case, this quo would just be ut. And the only reason it's quo is because we have facilius here. So this is the comparative, facilis facile, easy. So facilius, easier. Sees, this is if, introducing us to a conditional. Say, so reflexive, circle it, draw an arrow to the subject. Now, the subject here is actually referring back to Caesar. I know it's tempting to do this. It's actually not that. He's giving an opinion here. He's giving something outside of his mind. So this say is actually referring to back to Caesar. It's in the ablative, singular. It's referring back to Caesar. Invito. Now, invito comes from invitus a meaning unwilling. This is one of those ablative absolutes, and yes, it is an ablative absolute, where we have pronoun, which stands in for a noun, and then an adjective. This is the rarest of ablative absolutes. So a noun or pronoun with an adjective. So with him, meaning Caesar, invito, unwilling. This is also one of those rare kind of ablative absolutes where you can translate it almost conditionally. I wouldn't here, so that because we already have the conditional here. If they might try to cross, if he were unwilling, I would say, if they try to cross with him unwilling, or you could say against his permission. Invitus means unwilling. So with him, meaning Caesar being unwilling, with him not wanting to give his permission for them to pass through his province, this is why he builds the wall. He builds the murum, the wall, and he puts garrisons down and forts so that, so that this is going to be a comparative purpose clause. If they, the Helvetians, conentor, this is a present subjunctive. This is going to be a third person plural, present subjunctive of a deponent verb. If they, the Helvetians, should try. Transire, complementary infinitive of conor, to cross, se invito, ablative absolute, with him unwilling, against Caesar's permission. Then, possit, he, Caesar, might be able, third person singular, present active subjunctive of possum. You can see sit right there, it's potsit. He might be able to prohibere, to stop them, facilius, more easily, comparative adverb. And that explains why that is a quo and not an ut. Normally you would see ut facilius prohibere possit, so that he might be able to stop them more easily, but because we have the comparative, this has to be quo. Why did he disponet praesidia and communit castella? So that he might be more easily able to prohibere, to stop them, if they might try to cross, meaning through the province, with him unwilling, against his permission. Ubi ea dies, quam constituerat cum legati suenit, et legati ad eam reverterunt, negat se more et exemplo populi Romani, posse iter ulli per provinciam dare, et, si vim facere conentor, prohibitorum ostendit. All right, now things are getting serious. So ubi, when ea dies. When ea dies, remember that when dies, usually masculine, refers to a specific or appointed day, it can change genders and become feminine for obvious reasons, I guess. So that's what ea is doing here. So when that day, wait, which day? Quam. This explanatory relative clause explains which day this is. Quam. Remember that this has to agree, this relative pronoun, in gender and number with the antecedent, not necessarily in case. So quam. This is accusative singular feminine. This is singular feminine. The day which constituerat, which he, Caesar, had decided, you could say set up. You set up a date. When that day or that date, it's a date, which he had set up cum legatis, which he had decided or set up with the legates. Remember Nameus and Pericloetius? He told them, come back, ad idus apriles, around the Ides of April. So when that date, which he had set up with the legates, when it came, it should be when it, macron over the came, et legati, and the legati, nominative plural masculine, the legates ad eum, ad plus the accusative motion towards, to Caesar, reverterunt, third person plural perfect, when the legates returned to him, what then happened? Yeah, these are perfect tenses, when it and reverterunt. This is pluperfect because this action happened prior to the date which he had already set up with the legates. So when that date then came, and when the legates returned to him, he negat. Now we switch into the historical present. He negat. He denies. Nego, negare, negavi, negatus. He negates. He denies. So you can translate negat here as basically non dicit. They don't like to say non dicos very much, especially when introducing an indirect statement. They prefer to use nego to negate the whole thing. So you can say he denies that, or you can say that he says that he is known, and then put a known in front of the infinitive, and then following indirect statement. So this verb negat is going to negate the whole rest of the indirect statement. So if you want to say that he says that blah, 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 not to blah, 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 then go ahead. So negat. We actually have two verbs here, two main verbs, negat and ostendit, both of them taking indirect statement. So say, we have our verb introducing indirect statement, and then we have a say. So it's typically almost always going to be the accusative reflexive. So this is going to be the subject of the indirect statement. Not always, but almost always. And it refers immediately right back to the subject negat right here. So he, Caesar, denies that he, Caesar, standing in for the accusative Caesarem, more et exemplo. These are both ablatives, mos mores masculine, custom, manner, mores, exemplo, exemplum e neuter. These are both ablatives of accordance. They're offshoots of ablatives of cause. It's because of the custom and example, populi Romani, genitive, of the Roman people, or more fluidly in English, according to the custom and the example of the Roman people. Posse. This we have present active infinitive of possum, posse, potui, to be able to. Iter. This could be the main verb. That he is able. He is able. He says that he is not able is something you could also say. Something like dicit, se, non posse. They don't like to negate the infinitive inside the indirect statement. They prefer to, like I said earlier, put it in the introductory verb negat. So he denies that he is able, according to the custom and the example of the Roman people. And then possum screams out for a complementary infinitive. So let's keep our eyes peeled for that. Iter, from iter itineris neuter, journey, route, march, either nominative, it can't be nominative, we're in an indirect statement, or it's going to be the accusative, probably the direct object. Uli, uli. So ulus a any opposite of nullus none, not any. Those are heteroclites. What'd you call me? So ius in the genitive singular, and they have I, letter I, in the dative singular. So this is the dative singular. Ulli, to anyone. To anyone. Per, plus the accusative, meaning through. Per provinciam, through the province. That would be the Roman province, the provincia. Dare. Present active infinitive. All right, this is the complementary infinitive that has been that Posse has been screaming to have. So is able to give. He denies that he, Caesar, is able to give an iter, accusative direct object, to a dative indirect object, to anyone, to give a route or to give passage through the province to anyone. And that is according to the custom and the example of the Roman people. Meaning, I thought about it, and according to the morals of the Romans, it just would not be right and proper for me to allow you guys to go through our province. Really, to allow ulli, anyone, to have an iter, passage, a route or a march, per provinciam. Sorry guys, we're closed. So he says that he is not able to give passage through the province to anyone in accordance with the custom and the example of the Roman people. And we are not done. Caesar's not done laying this down. And si vim facere conentor, if vim, from vis feminine, meaning force, strength, violence, it's the root of violence, accusative, singular, facere, present active infinitive, which is a complementary infinitive that conor, conari, conatus, sum, conentor is screaming out for, to try. If they should try to make force, if they should try to force away, if they should try to, you could even say to bring the ruckus. If they want to start something, I don't recommend it, Caesar says. And if they would try to bring the ruckus, prohibitorum ostendet. This officially is the end of this indirect statement right here. The negat, and then this indirect statement, provinciam dare, end. And if they try to bring the ruckus, prohibitorum ostendet, because then we have a main verb here introducing us to this indirect statement right here. He explains, he ostendet, he shows, he lays out in exacting detail that we're going to borrow the same subject, kaisarem, the say, the reflexive, from the previous indirect statement, because the subject of negat and ostendet are the same, Caesar. He says that he denies that he can do this, and then he explains to them in exacting detail that he, prohibitorum, he will, we're missing our essay, so that's a future active infinitive showing a subsequent action to this present tense, this historical present. He laid out to them in exacting detail that he will prohibit them, he will stop them if they try to bring the ruckus. This present subjunctive here is explained by this being a subordinate clause inside this indirect statement. So any subordinate clause inside indirect statement, the verb should be subjunctive. So if they should try. So when that day, that date, which he had decided with the legates came, and the legates returned to him, he says that he is not able, in accordance with the custom and example of the Roman people, to give passage through the province to anyone. And he explains to them very carefully that if they should try to bring the ruckus, he will stop them. Helvetii. Okay, what are they going to do? Our first change of subject, our first main subject change since the chapter started. So the Helvetii, the Helvetians, oh no, what are they going to do? Ea spe. Ea is id, ablative singular feminine, agreeing with the ablative singular feminine of spe feminine, hope. So with that hope, deiecti. There's the day. De yakio, yakare, yeki, yaktos, de yekti. You can turn that first I into a J and we get dejected. So the Helvetians, dejected, or rejected, or thrown away from. I typically translate this as despaired because it's typically spared with space, with hope. It's typically paired with space. Wow, that was awesome. Which means hope. So the Helvetians despaired in this hope. Which hope? The one that we were just talking about, that they might be given passage through the province. So the Helvetians, comma, having despaired of this hope. Yeah, I know that translated that with a future, with a perfect active participle, but it is a Latin perfect passive participle. It literally means having been thrown away from this hope. In English, we could say despaired of this hope. Having despaired of this hope. And then we have lots of ablatives. Navibus junctis ratibusque cum pluribus factis. So the Helvetii easpe dejecti navibus junctis ratibusque cum pluribus factis. Alii vadis rodani, qua minima altitudino fluminis erat, non numquam inter diu saepius noctu, si per rompere possent conati, operis munitione, et militum concursu, et teldis reposi, hoc conatu destituerunt. So sad. So we have ships, ablative plural feminine of navis, navis feminine, ship. Junctis, from jungo, jungere, junxi, junctus. And these two are going to agree. With ships joined, with ships lashed together, the ancient world's technique for making a bridge before they had a really good bridge building technology. For more information, see Caesar, de Bello Gallico, book 4. So they would, the ancients would tie ships together. They would lash ships together, and that makes a bridge. Ratibusque, so ratis, feminine. So with rafts, cum pluribus, from cum plures, meaning several. Factis, from facio, facere, feci, factus. So with with boats lashed together and with rafts, several of them, made. And with several rafts made. This is actually going to turn out, by the time we get to the end, to all be one big ablative of means. It's by means of ships lashed together and by means of several rafts made that the Helvetians tried to get across. Alii, showing the Helvetians. So some of them do this. So the Helvetians subjected in this hope. Some of them, by means of the boats lashed together and several rafts made. Others by means of the shoals, wadum e neuter, meaning shallow shoals. It's where you can wade. So alii, nominative plural masculine. Others by means of the wadis, the shoals, the shallows of the Rhone. Qua minima altitudino fluminis erat. Qua just means where. And he's referring back to the shoals. The shallows of the Rhone River, where the altitudino, remember that altitudo in Latin can either mean height or it can mean depth. So especially when we're talking about rivers, we're talking about depth here. So where the depth of the river erat minima was the superlative least. So the depth of the river was the least in the shallows, the shoals of the river. So some people, they got some boats lashed together, they made several rafts. Others, they just decided to swim across or ford the Rhone by shoals where the depth of the river was the least. Non numquam. Here we have an example of litites. Non numquam, meaning not never, meaning sometimes. Sometimes inter diu, and then saepius noctu. Saepius, that's the comparative of saepe often, so oftener, more often, noctu. Noctu is an adverb, meaning by night, just as inter diu is an adverb meaning by day. So noctu, hopefully you can see the English word nocturnal, meaning something that's awake during the nox noctis feminine night. The opposite of that is diurnal. So something that is awakened during the day. And you can see inter diu diurnal, the diu part. So non nunquam inter diu, sometimes by day, saepius noctu, more often by night. Si perrumpere possent conati. If perrumpere, present active infinitive, it's not just rumpo rumpere, to break, but it's to perrumpere, to break through, to break through, to bust through. Possent, from possum, posse, potui. Third plural, imperfect subjunctive, active. If they might be able to perrumpere, to bust through, conati, and then present, it's going to be not present, perfect passive participle. We're going to translate as active because conor is a deponent verb. So to try to see if they might break through. If, having tried, they might be able to break through. If they could try to break through. So the whole thing thus far, because we're going to do a little bit of a shift, is the Helvetians, the Helvetii. The Helvetians, comma, despaired of this hope. Having despaired of this hope, comma, they were now going to jump down to the conati. They, having tried to see if they might be able to break through, perrumpere, with boats lashed together and with several rafts made, or by the shoals of the Rhone, where the depth of the river was the least, comma, sometimes by night, or sometimes by day, more often by night. I would then put a semicolon here. I would then take a rather long breath. So the Helvetians, that's a shame, despaired in this hope. Oh well, we're still going to try. So they still tried if they might be able to bust through Caesar's wall. Now, that might seem a little bit odd, they're going to bust through Caesar's wall, but let's point out that Caesar actually did not build a continuous 19-mile long wall. Really what he did was he went down here, and where there are the shallows and the shoals of the Rhone, like right here would be a pretty good spot, this is where he constructed fortifications. So it's not a continuous wall where the whole thing is connected. It's just segments of wall that go 19 for a length of 19 miles here and there. In places where it looks like that the Helvetians are going to cross. So he puts fortifications right there, along with the Castella and Praesidia. Also, you can see how there's the shoals right here, and you get up to, the Helvetians have to go up to here. Here's the ditch that they would dig, and then they would throw the earth from the ditch on top of here, and then build the wall on top. So there are places where the Helvetians probably could bust through this wall, and that's probably what they're trying to do in their attempts to perrumpere, to break through. And they do so by means of ships lashed together and several rafts made. This is something like or, like some do this, others do this, or by means of the shallows of the Rhone, in the shallows of the Rhone where the depth of the river was the least. Sometimes by day, more often by night, because the cover of night, it's easier to sneak around. Semicolon. Operis munitione et militum concursu et telis repulsi. Now we have operis, the genitive of opus operis neuter, so of the work, the fortification. Munitione, ablative singular feminine of munitio, munitionis, feminine fortification. Et militum concursu, so we have the genitive plural of miles militis, soldiers. And then concursu, ablative singular masculine of concursus us masculine. That means a running together, a concourse, a cursu, a coming cum together, an assembly. Here I would translate like the mob. the gathering or a mob of militum, a mob of soldiers. Et telis repulsi. So we have et and et. So there are three things. They are repulsi, nominative plural masculine, like konati and dejecti, agrees with the Helveti. So repulsi, having been repulsed, having been beaten back by the munitione, ablative of means, by the fortification of the work, of the operas. And repulsi, having been beaten back by the concursu militum, by the assembly of the soldiers, or the mob of the soldiers. Because I would imagine that as a great number of Helvetians try and cross the river, we have then the Roman soldiers would then mob from their various places of fortification to go down to here and launch weapons and whatnot, like it says here, upon these Helvetians. And they're repulsed by the weapons. So they're repulsed by the work itself, by the soldiers that man the work, and then the weapons that they throw, which fall heavily and hard. So repulsi, the Helvetians, and I would, because we add a semicolon, right? They, comma, having been repulsed by the fortifications of the work, the mob of soldiers, and their weapons, they hoc conatu desteterunt. They hoc conatu, ablative of separation. Hoc from hic haec hoc, this thing right here. Here, hic haec hoc is here. This conatu, conatus us masculine, that's the noun form of conor, conare, conatus, meaning attempt, a try. So this is an attempt, this attempt. And it's ablative of separation, working with desteterunt, and you can see the de. It's like easpe dejecti. You can see the de, ablative of separation. You can see the de, to stand away from, to stand apart from, to stop from this attempt, to cease from this attempt. In English, we would say cease in this attempt, but Latin, they prefer to cease from this attempt. Hoc conatu desteterunt. So, having been repulsed by the fortification of the work, the mob of soldiers, and their weapons, they cease in this attempt. They stopped. They had enough. All right, we'll find a different way. And a different way they do find.